I like this so much because, well, he plays for my favorite team and because it upsets Pittsburgh so much, which you got me going on that. And apparently there was some audio from the afternoon show over in Pittsburgh. We'll play a little bit later on. But I wanted to get to this because the NFL is yesterday morning in the rankings started to come out. Myles Garrett was still ranked the number one edge rusher in the NFL, according to executives, coaches, and scouts going into 2025, which he takes that ranking back-to-back years. At 29 years old, Myles Garrett is number one. Last year's ranking was number one. His lowest ranking has been number 4. And who's right behind him, Tone? TJ Watt. Highest ranking TJ Watt has ever been is number 1. He has actually claimed the number 1 spot before. Last year's ranking, though, still number 2. Micah Parsons took number 3. Max Crosby took number 4. Nick Bosa took number 5. And Trey Hendrickson actually took number 6. We don't need to get into any of the other ones. It does come down to TJ Watt and certainly our very own Myles Garrett here. I love it.
And by the way, I would add, like, over the last 7 years, we've had a lot of debates about this. Like, I remember I was throwing Nick Bosa into the ring when he came into the NFL, and I was like, holy cow, this guy is going to be a difference maker. But, you know, injuries to Nick, because he was playing on the biggest stage right away.
Yeah.
While, you know, Myles Garrett and TJ Watt were not.
I love it because fans care about sacks. And I think players care about sacks. Sacks is still what gets people paid. The difference, and this is what makes the NFL fun and what makes pro sports so fun. There's still an entertainment factor there that we claim we don't want. Like I heard Nick and Jonathan talking about this and going into it. He had mentioned, I want to say it's our buddy Spencer Davies, who said he longs for a day where we go back to analysis instead of content. And I'm sitting there thinking it's always been about content. And Nick agreed because Nick had said it as well on the air. And I thought, because this is part of the entertainment of it. The NFL, Major League Baseball, all of it, they all care about entertainment to a great degree. And they always have. So if they've cared about entertainment for a great degree for over 100 years, certainly that means the people involved in the media have cared about entertainment even more than analysis for over 100 years. Good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, it's just more prevalent now because we have 24-hour news cycles. So it's not as newsy as it used to be. It's more content-driven. Good, bad, that's in the eye of the beholder, but nothing's changed in the last 100 years. For a guy like Myles Garrett, sacks matter because it gets you paid. It's what the fans care about. But when you ask this wasn't a fan poll, when you ask executives, coaches, and scouts, you know me as a football guy, they know who's really number 1. They know that. And I do think that when you have this conversation between these two guys, if you put Myles Garrett and plop him in the Steelers defense, what does that do? If you took TJ Watt and plopped him in the Browns defense, what does that do? Because Myles looks more multifaceted. And you've seen him in the Jim Schwartz defense, which is something we're going to get into here over the next couple of days, because you brought up a hell of a point on the phone the other day about this. But you've seen him in that Jeff Schwartz defense. All of a sudden, he's standing over the center. All of a sudden, he's over on the other side. We always argue, why is he always on one side? Why? Now he's standing over center, and he's going between the legs and goofing around before the snap and things of that nature. Pressures mean something. Hurries mean something. The overall where coaches know I got to circle 95 to start the play, and then I go elsewhere. And what impact does that have on that defense? 2 years ago, it was a top 5 defense. It fell off a little bit, I think, because of turnover margins here last year, but we'll find out going into year 3 with Jim Schwartz. But still, you circle 95, and then you work your way out, and there's 95 and 21, and then you go down the list. But when you go to the Pittsburgh defense, hey, number 90, hell of a player. But then you get down the list, you go, okay, there's more that you have to take into account here that I think for a lot of executives, coaches, scouts think help him, that don't help Myles Garrett, and that's why Myles Garrett's number 1.
I think Myles...
It's a bit of an indictment on the Browns, but still.
Yeah, well, sure, especially because every time that we would sign somebody to play alongside of him, and they kind of would do it year by year, or, 2 years out of Clowney, you would have expected these other guys on the line to put up Hall of Fame numbers playing alongside Myles, and it's never been close to happening. We've had some good defensive lines, but has it ever been truly as dominant as you think it should be when you've got a game wrecker like
it was terrible.
Myles Garrett on one side?
It was horrific for a while, and it got a little bit better with some guys. Like I thought Obo was better than what some wanted to give him credit for. You mentioned Jadeveon Clowney. We haven't been able to scratch the surface with Alex Wright because he's been hurt. Obviously, they're excited about Isaiah McGuire, but we're talking about mid to later round guys.
Yeah. So for the longest time, I thought it was pretty interchangeable, and I threw Nick Bosa in there as well. I'm like, all these guys are just wrecking games, and I thought at the time, like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I thought TJ Watt had a little better motor than Myles. So they did things in a little different ways. But now I think the last 2 years, it's been obvious that Myles Garrett has been the best. I know Micah Parsons has, tried to lay claim, but he's a different type of player too, like where they line him up, comparatively to Myles. But now I think Myles is clearly the best. And last year, I think he would have, again, been right up there for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, I think he was top 5 anyway.
Yeah.
But he would have had a chance to win, but you're not going to win that on a 3-win football team where the defense has slipped.
No.
That's just not happening.
It isn't. And I think that where Myles has separated himself is, again, with the entire package. And I love trolling the Steelers, and I love trolling Steelers fans, and you guys know I love trolling Pony because it drives Pony crazy that Myles Garrett is more well thought of in the NFL and with NFL circles than TJ Watt. I think it drives Pony crazy when I beat the brakes off him in arguments about these two guys and where, yeah, you know what, you can talk about hardware, but I can also talk about hardware, and I can talk about more of it with Myles Garrett. And then even when you get to the wins with the playoff wins, one guy has a playoff win, even though he has far fewer appearances.
Isn't that crazy?
He has one more playoff win than the other guy.
Isn't that crazy that we've watched? I mean, TJ Watt and Myles Garrett have been two of this has been a great rivalry.
Yeah.
Two of the great defensive players in the game. They've won a whopping one playoff win between the two of them. Mm-hmm. It happens to be one over the other.
Because both teams have found themselves.
It's incredible.
Because both teams have found themselves, while edge rusher is big and there's a lot of important positions, both these teams have found themselves at crossroads with quarterbacks. They haven't found theirs since Big Ben, and obviously we've been still looking for ours. We had a look at one for a while, but we all freaked out over that. We've been looking for one solid since Bernie. So they both have a tremendous impact. I think it comes down to if I'm arguing with a Steelers fan, I'll get the claws out. I'm not arguing with a Steelers fan. I'm arguing with you. And by the way, you and I used to argue about TJ Watt and Myles Garrett in years past. I mean, you talked about the motor there. But I think you're even resigned to this. And this is where a Steelers fan, I think, sometimes has raised the white flag over this. TJ Watt has been injured. He wants a contract. And you said it yourself, you trade him. And a lot more people, I think, I'm surprised by it because the Steelers look to be making all-in moves. And an all-in move would be paying TJ Watt, who, yes, is 30 years old, paying TJ Watt for still this season because you're still a much better caliber of football team and you have a much better chance to do anything in the playoffs with TJ Watt than without TJ Watt. And there's a lot of people who are lining up right behind you who are Steelers fans. You're not a Steelers fan. You're like, yeah, let's trade the guy. Let's trade him. He's outworn his usefulness. He's probably on his way down.
Steelers team,
you don't have to do this. You don't have to sign him. You can trade him.
Yeah, that's why you're going to be monitoring this Steeler thing very closely because they never have down years. Cam Hayward's 37.
Yes.
Okay. Aaron Rodgers is how old?
41.
This thing, the way that they've gone out and traded assets to get almost older, this is it. Like this is going to be one final Steelers run, and then it's going to be a total reboot of I think everything.
Yes.
I think Tomlin, I think the whole organization could turn over. They've been looking. There's been a bunch of boredom in Pittsburgh with their specific situation. Just, hey, we're going to make the playoffs every year, and we're going to have no chance, no ceiling to go anywhere. I think that is going to come crashing down. They are in for a total reboot at the end of the year.
But Andrew Berry is one of these executives. I don't know if he's one of the guys who have voted in this and everything. I don't know if it's an everybody type of thing. But when we go back to the possible trade, where it's like, how do you get known in NFL circles as the guy who traded for Deshaun Watson, where in NFL circles we talked about knowledge of offense, and then you traded away Myles Garrett, where he's clearly the most respected of the pass rushers out. But we had Mary Kay on at 8:22. She was wonderful with us, even though she was on vacation in Wyoming, for crying out loud. She's going to go to Yellowstone today. And I kind of asked, you asked the question because we got something said to us. The gambling places, the sports book, they send us How many different emails do we get a day? We probably get a dozen different emails a day with lines because they want us to mention the sports books and things like that. And we're sports talk hosts, for crying out loud. And Kevin Stefanski's odds were the 5th best to the Bet Online AG, was it? Was it the Caesars? Which one?
Oh, it's 4th.
4th best. Yeah. 4th best odds to be fired this year.
The first coach fired.
To be the first coach fired this year. Thank you.
He then had the 7th best odds to be the 3rd coach fired.
And of course.
And then the weird one that I don't understand at all. He had the best odds to be the 5th coach fired. I don't know where they get these from.
You can gamble on anything out there. So he had the best. He had the 4th best odds to be the first coach fired in the NFL. Lima asked Mary Kay the question. Mary Kay says, no dice.
The philosophy, of course, this year is to kind of return to the Kevin Stefanski offense. So they're emphasizing, again, not only 2 tight ends, but 3 tight ends at times. And the running game is going to be back in full force. So those are the areas where they committed more resources, more draft picks than they did in the receiving core right now. And, of course, they brought Deontay Johnson on board, but he's going to really have to come out there in training camp and prove that he deserves this job. So that will be an interesting thing to watch.
So this year is not make or break for Kevin Stefanski or Andrew Berry.
No, I don't think that anyone is safe no matter what. I mean, there are some that are, but I think it's basically a season of exploration and, I mean, winning, of course, but also trying to figure out if one of these young guys, and I mean everybody but Joe, can be their quarterback of the future. And we know that they are poised to draft a quarterback in the first round. I think they should draft a quarterback in the first round next year. But yeah, so I think because of that, they're not looking at this as a make or break season for this regime.
More audio of that, 923thefan.com. You can find it on the free Odyssey app as well when you use the absolutely free rewind function. It's great. You can also still do a coming in hotline that's right next to the Listen Live button if you want to do that and leave us a voicemail with how much you hated the interview or loved the interview or how much crazy it seems to be that Kevin Stefanski would or wouldn't be on the hot seat. Now, I brought this up to you before. I think at some point there has to be some sort of ramifications. We can't just keep doing this same thing that we've been doing because Lima, you had an excellent point right before the show that I want to get to everybody at 9:45 about this front office and where it's been or hasn't been really over the last decade, because there's certain members of this front office that have been through a couple of general managers. At some point, the scoreboard's up there, and you have to answer for being on the losing end of that. Not just to placate your fans. I could sit here and talk smart football stuff and be, well, you guys don't really know. No, eventually, you guys, it's an entertainment business. You pour your heart and souls into these 3 teams, and if they can't get that job done, somebody's going to have to answer for it. So it's insulting to say after 6 years, you guys don't know what you're talking about. He should be fine. I think that we could be a little understanding about all this and say, hey, he got his offense ripped out from underneath him last year. They had to change coaches who he really liked. They had to change his offensive line coaches, who is arguably the second most important coach that they have other than Kevin. And they hired Boobery to replace him, that they had to basically replace without telling anybody halfway through the year. We've been over that dead corpse a million times. But damn it, there is a laundry list of who I find to be good coaches who have lists a mile long themselves of reasons why they still could have kept their job or why they were sabotaged out of their own job, whether it be self-sabotage or on purpose or whatever. And Kevin could be one of those guys. So to tell fans, see, this is where I hate it, where to tell fans, well, there's no hot seat. Nobody's worried about anything. Don't you worry about anything. You can't worry about anything. Okay, I'll do that. We'll talk Guardians then. We'll do what we've been talking about with the Guardians. I'll come back to you when you take yourself seriously. The whole argument. And I don't want to do that.
Is it a win total? Let me ask you this. A win total. Is that what's like, is there a number or
that's what I wanted to ask.
Is it how the young quarterbacks look? Like, is there a way the young quarterbacks could look good and then lose a lot of games?
I'm tired of this being subjective. There has to be something there that is right there. Boom. This is what you're judged by. I mean, ultimately, Tone, we live in a world where you and I are judged by certain things that I can go subjectively, whatever.
Yes. Okay,
we are judged by that.
What's the gauntlet here to start the season? So let's say it's Joe Flacco that starts the season, and everyone has talked about the first 6 games for, how difficult this is going to be for the Browns, right?
Yeah.
So let's say they go 1-5, in the first 6. I'm not saying blown out or anything like that. They go 1-5. They don't perform that well. It's Cincinnati, it's Baltimore, it's Green Bay, it's Detroit, it's Minnesota.
You're giving me my whole argument what I've been saying for months, by the way.
Okay, so let's say they go 1-5, 2-4, whatever, and start. Then they go, well, okay, season's over already. At 1-5, you're thinking the season's over with this roster and everything.
Yeah,
so now you go to one of the young guys. Let's say Pickett's not here anymore. Or let's say it's Pickett that starts out 1-5, 2-4.
Good God.
And Flacco's not here. Now we go to Shador or Gabriel. We'll let the fans decide what makes sense for the argument. Whatever. Let's say they go to one of those guys and they go 500 the rest of the year. Okay? So that's 11 games. All right, so they go 5-6 the rest of the year. That's a 6-11 record for the season. You keeping Kevin Stefanski in that hypothetical? Because I think that's a hypothetical that is legitimate. If one of the young quarterbacks is decent.
How do we feel at the end of the year? I mean, we won one time. We kept
What
two.
did we do when Baker got in finally, and then they went 500 or maybe a little worse the rest of the year? We felt really good.
Yeah, but I didn't feel that great at the end of the year when they kept Eric Mangini because he won 4 in a row. And I felt that we were just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, but I was at a station that no one was listening to at the time, so nobody gave a damn what I thought. Listen, we can move these things around. None of this is concrete. I think he's got to get the 7 games. I think he's got to get the 7 wins. Give me the 7 wins. You told me before, is the roster, I hate asking a bunch of questions, but here we go. Is the roster worse than what it was last year? Do you believe? Yes, no. Do you believe the roster is worse than what it was last year? Say it. Say what you mean.
Yeah,
say it.
Because I don't know anything about the rookies.
Okay.
I like the draft, but no.
So
I think
as of right now,
they got no JOK. They got no Nick Chubb. The offensive line's a year later, and they're all
a lot
old.
of people agree with you. I bet a lot of people agree with you. A lot of people agree. I don't think that means their record's going to be worse than last year because I don't think that there was any effort really in December.
Right. They're trying to lose
but
at the end of the year.
They do not have a better roster than what they had last year. Okay, that's one reason. The other reason is exactly what you said with the quarterbacks. That's why I think it's imperative to start Joe Flacco because I want to keep the mind and the hearts of the veterans on my football team because I think he's got to reach a certain point to be safe. Even if I didn't like Kevin and Andrew personally, which I do, even if I didn't, because there was one guy I didn't like personally, and that's pretty well known. I don't like changing coaches. I don't like just firing guys. And I really especially hate if we go into halfway through the season and Lyman gives me like a 1-5 scenario and then we switch them out halfway through the year. Because that to me is that now you've really sunk your ship and you shouldn't have done that. Like, I totally agree. Mary Kay is right, and I agree with the Browns on this point. They do not start the season off. They are right now not on the hot seat. You are not thinking about firing them guys because if you were, you should have done that in January. So that's not a consideration. My whole consideration is this. What do you do after this season how do I prove that these philosophies work? Because I'm telling you, if this roster ain't that great, which you say it isn't, you get the 7 games with this schedule, you get the 7 wins, somebody's going to have to play well, and then I can make arguments. Then I can tell you. Then I can feel a little bit better about it. We could still be looking for a quarterback. But it's got to make this thing look better for the future of it. Maybe you take your 2 first-round picks, you move up, get a quarterback. Or you know what? Maybe if you win 7 games, and by what you said, you end up being 500 or just above 500, just flip it over to 6-5. You know damn well, Tone, we're going to be talking about Dylan Gabriel or Shador Sanders and whether or not they deserve to control the offense. I will hope that Cedric Tillman has stepped up then and has become a nice weapon for this football team. Maybe Jamari Thrash becomes a third option. I'm probably wishing in one hand and you know what the other and all that, but maybe it happens. Quinshon Judkins will have had to have played well. The offensive line will have had to have played well. So, yeah, I want them to be successful because even if I didn't like the 2 guys, I still don't like switching coaches. All you're doing is making fans who are angry happy, but I don't know if the new guys coming in are going to be any better. How many times have we switched out guys for worse or just as bad? So many times. So I think that they got to get the 7 wins. And if they don't get the 6, boy, you better have a lot of evidence. In the words of Nick Wilson, you better be ready to show your work to that fan base about why everybody should come back in 2026 because, damn it, it's going to start to look the same thing over and over again by that time, especially after you get done saying what you're going to say at 9:45 about certain members of that front office.
No.
Is David Njoku a guy that you would extend?
Probably not.
Woo,
Probably not.
Dougie.
So, boy, what a interesting and lengthy career he has had with the Browns now.
God, he's only 29 still. Feels like he's
remember,
140 years old.
When they took him, this was they were trying
Oh my
to go,
gosh, today's his birthday. Happy birthday.
Hey,
Wow.
David.
Oh, we're going to
Have
talk about your
yourself a day,
future
young
with
man.
the Browns on your birthday.
That's right. When they drafted Njoku, he was super young for that position. Right?
Yeah.
Yes, he was 20.
He was 20. He was not yet 20. When he showed up originally, he wasn't old
Which
enough
is
to
really
drink.
young for a position where you have to do two totally different things. You have to block, you have to run routes and catch balls.
He
Like
became a much better blocker as time went on.
Yes. Oh, he has definitely found a role. Like he's going to have such a long career in the NFL now. But the question is, like, he's going to be looking for a massive contract, right?
Yeah.
But
you're 29. Well, he's an NFL football player. He's always looking for a massive contract.
He's been a top, would you say, 7, 8 tight end?
I think I would extend him. I think you can actually bring him back for something decent here. He's an unrestricted free agent.
This is good then.
They can be voided or he can be an unrestricted free agent. This is after this season. His base salary cap hits at 11, dead cap's at 20. So obviously he's staying here, but you have to work an extension there. He has been injured more than I like. And it makes the Harold Fannin Jr. signing seem so much bigger. How much could David Njoku get on the open market after this year? How much do you think, if he has a really good season, he may very well price himself out of it. But if he has another season where he's good and he shows promise, but he ends up getting hurt, he could certainly sign himself into this. And I think, again, remember what position I'm going to be in going into next year. I'm probably going to have another rookie quarterback. Am I not?
Oh, yeah.
There's people who are giving me all sorts of hell right now on social media because I said that. Guys, I love Shedeur Sanders because I love his dad, and I like Dylan Gabriel, fair enough. They were day 2 and day 3 guys. They are owed nothing by this football team. So let's go on the premise that we're going to be drafting a quarterback next year. Don't you want a guy that you know is going to be open? Don't you want a guy you know is going you can use as a safety valve? Because Harold Fannin certainly shows a lot of promise. I'm not guaranteed of that by Harold Fannin just yet. I haven't seen him in an NFL football game just yet.
And
I can guarantee you that about David Njoku.
When Fannin, who again 20 years old, so he turns 21 here in a week and a half. So maybe we'll do the same thing for him. They give him a commemorative show, but Fannin's kind of considered a project too, right? Just coming out of. He's a newer tight end too in the last how many years? Yeah, he was not a tight end.
I'm soft pedaling it for whatever reason because I know he's from Canton. But either way, yes, he is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about him. Yes. I get to call a few of his games in college. Like it was awesome to watch him. He belonged on a field against Penn State, on a field against Texas A&M. He 100% belonged. But then I remember right before the draft, there were some people that were like, "Look at the way he runs." They weren't impressed with his drills at the Senior Bowl, was it? Mm-hmm. They weren't, or was it the Combine? The Combine, they weren't.
Combine, they were. Yeah, everybody was critical of him at the Combine.
So, are you thinking that it's like keeping Njoku? That's like a mentor to him, while it also gets in the way of him and could potentially get in the way of him and his development, Fannin. So. Do they look at it that way?
I don't think that he's a mentor. I don't like the mentor stuff. I used to want to be like saying that all the time. And then I think over the last few years, even before Joe Flacco coming back, I think that kind of goes, you can be a good teammate. You don't have to be a mentor or any, it's like you're training people don't like to train their replacements. I don't think that football players like to train their replacements either, but you could see the writing on the wall. Use it as a challenge. Go out there, play your ass off, and going into year 30 on Earth and going into another year in the NFL, go out and either get yourself paid by the Browns, where I think it would make sense to sign him now instead of letting him go out there and have a season and then possibly risk having to franchise tag him or having to do any sort of free agency. But at the age of 30, I think that the franchise tag is on the table for something there. But I think for a guy like David Njoku, if he ends up having a good season, I think if you're the Browns, you have to consider what you're bringing into next year. And what you're bringing into next year, as of right now, is another rookie quarterback. You need a guy that you can trust. I got Jerry Jeudy I can trust. Hopefully I'll have the running backs that I can trust. We'll see where that goes because they're rookies too. But if I have David Njoku, a veteran, that's another tight end and probably still 12 personnel because they're operating the Kevin Stefanski. They're not thinking about firing Kevin Stefanski. So if I'm going 12 personnel with any one of these tight ends and quarterbacks, I want a guy that I can count on. It makes sense. I think it makes sense to sign David Njoku right now than wait any more time, wait any more minutes to sign David Njoku. I think his price can only go up. And it's his birthday, for crying out loud.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to
David Njoku.
Happy birthday to you.
She's got a good broadcasting voice. Syracuse Pound.
Get that kid in the booth.
We have our very own Olivia Harlan right here in Cleveland. You're a play-by-play guy. We were the first ones to it, and we might be getting passed up. Lima, describe it. Cleveland Browns, first one to analytics.
So they were, right? They were the first ones to truly take analytics to the next level. They not only defined it, I mean, people have been using numbers for scouting for years. John Dorsey reminded you of that. I think one of the first times you had met John Dorsey, and he was talking to you about offensive linemen and measurements and everything. But they took it to a sophisticated method to the point where everybody around the NFL was like, whoa, the Browns are the analytics team. In fact, to this day, every time there is an athletic poll surveying all sorts of different ways the teams are built, the Browns are still the team that comes up with analytics. But now every team has some level of analytics, some more robust than others. I mean, you look at I think the Baltimore Ravens, don't they have like a full page of people working in analytics? Like more and more team, Philadelphia, clearly they use analytics. So the Browns were like the first to that level. They were almost ahead of everybody. They were almost too soon. Like they probably would even admit now that they didn't know which analytics mattered. Like they've changed their guardrails over the years. I think they've even admitted that.
Yeah.
So they've had guys and men and women, I think, plucked, have gone to other places around the NFL. But I think it's pretty clear that other teams have figured out how to properly use analytics to their betterment.
How long?
Even more so than the Browns.
I think it's a great point.
I think we were too early on analytics.
No, I don't. It's not that we're too early. How long has Paul DiBedesta been here? Decade?
Man, yeah.
11 years?
Yeah.
Maybe 11 years he's been here. And I think that he's challenged him like it's always challenged the guardrails. They've absolutely challenged the guardrails and changed the guardrails and have tried to move with it. But, there have been guys. I think that the younger people in the NFL now, I think that they grew up in analytics and they grew up within football analytics. Like he brought, for better for worse, Paul DiBedesta, I shouldn't have said the worst part. He brought the concept of it really to the NFL. But his was also a baseball analytics. And I think that at times they've shined, but in a lot of ways they've really struggled because they're obviously different sports. And I think that sometimes because it's never been a stable situation with technically the exception of the last 6 years, but there have been some rocky moments, some hills that they've overcorrected in certain places. You had too many guys who were on guts. There were too many gut feelings. And then you had guys like Spark DeValve. And it's like, you're a good guy, but you're not a difference maker. Like this was a spark score thing. So I think that at times they've gone just too far in each. Well, now you've had, 11 years in the NFL. That might as well be 40 in a lot of other parts of life. So you got these guys who, if they start in analytics and they had an analytic point of view in the NFL, by the time they got to the NFL, maybe they were in the early parts of college, starting out as a GA. Maybe they were just coming out of college and they were like, hey, you got to focus on this. Well, it's been 11 years. So now they have the football bend to it. And so many times we're finding out when we talk about the Eagles, certainly they have a lot of parts of analytics of what they do. And it's very analytically driven. But some of it's just common sense. And they got the perfect level of common sense. when Jalen Carter ends up to him, oh, you can't draft that guy. Oh, my goodness. Well, he's going to be a problem. Well, if I have the right people in place, like what's analytical? What has been analytical in the mind of Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox? They care about destroying quarterbacks and holding court within their locker room. And so when you introduce young men who may have one incident, because really it was a terrible incident, but it was one incident. When you have one incident like that, but overall, I didn't think he was a terrible kid or anything like that. It was just a very bad part of a mistake that he ended up being a part of. Okay, can he keep this guy in line? Can he do this? Yeah, certainly they can because they have the responsible part to it.
What does the average fan think when they think analytics in football? What do they think?
I think they think it takes the fun out of the sport. I think they think it's going to do
what it's done. But how is it used? How is it used? How do most fans think analytics are used? Do they think it's in gameplay? Do they think it's in strategy in the draft? Like Eric DeCosta.
Yes.
But I mean, the first thing that comes to their mind.
Well, when they are using it in a derogatory term, right? When they go, well, the analytics doesn't work. They're saying it's the play calling and things like that.
I think they think that. I think that's where they think analytics is first. When Eric DeCosta is on record saying their data models, a lot of their models are used in the draft, and how they even aggregate mock drafts from the media. That's part of their analytics. Like, it's just become so much more sophisticated. And like the Browns were version 1.0, or they were like beta testing their analytics, and they were way ahead of everybody on it. And they were hiring people from Wall Street. And I think they were just they didn't have their best practices that were truly tested and reformed. Now, they have analytics, so does everybody else.
The Browns have been the guinea pig, so they could go out, or the canary in the coal mine, if you will, and they could try it. And then the other teams, they've been able to refine it over that time. Which, by the way, you mentioned Eric DeCosta. He's the king of saying pens down by the time that the combine comes around. They're the team that doesn't really care about the combine. So I know. I think you're right.
They just figured out where, for them, it makes sense to use it.
No, I think you're right. But the fear that I think a lot of general fans have, I think, is unfounded because, like in baseball, I think it's changing a little bit because the pitching has changed and some of the other things have changed to it. But we went through a spell where launch angle, pop-ups, home runs or nothing. And it's like, I can see home run derby next week. I don't need to try to see home run derby every time, especially with guys who really ain't hitting home runs. That's what bothered me. But in the NFL, guys are going for it on fourth down, not just settling for field goals. Going forward on fourth down with on their own side of the field, some of the ways the play calling has changed, like that's fun. I think the NFL's been a blast with analytics.
Like the analytics have basically got every team to throw on first down.
Yeah.
I mean, the league, if you look at first down throws compared today from 15 years ago, I think it's a stark difference.